Hello and welcome to Allegion's presentation, An Introduction to Master Keying. My name is Gordon Malczewski. I am a senior product trainer for Schlage under the Allegion umbrella. I'm also a certified professional locksmith. I am a certified fire door and life safety inspector, and I'm also certified as a physical security professional by As Is. Got over 40 years of training experience in the security industry, and I am based in Roanoke, Virginia. So I want to thank you for joining me for today's presentation. We're going to jump right into our topics. So our topics for today's presentation are going to include what is master keying. When you hear the words master keying, what exactly does that refer to? So I'm going to go through that with you during the course of this presentation. And also talk about what are the advantages and disadvantages of master keying. Now, oftentimes when you think about master keying, you think that there are only good things associated with it, positive aspects of master keying. But in fact, there are disadvantages, and we do need to take those into consideration when we are setting up or developing a master key system. And we have to have things in place that are going to mitigate or reduce the likelihood that we're going to affect the security and or longevity of the system. I'm going to be talking about master keying terminology. These are the technical terms associated with the keys, the cylinders, the paperwork, the master keying aspects of the cylinder itself. It is very important that you understand and use the correct technical terms when you are describing, laying out, or requesting a master key system. This will help ensure that you get an accurate master key system, something that is laid out and or designed as you wish. It'll cut down on mistakes and miscommunication. We're going to be talking about how master keying works. Now, this will be from a mechanical standpoint. We take a look at what's happening inside the cylinder when you master key. We'll be talking about best practices, some things that you should try to include in a master key system, and some of the things that you should avoid as well. So what is master keying? Well, talking about master keying, the first thing we need to do is consider the fact that it is part of a key system. It's just one of the parts of a key system. So some of the components of a key system include cylinders. So these obviously are what accept the key. The key will slide into the cylinder. It's the cylinders themselves that are master keyed. Keys are certainly part of a key system as well. The master key system, the paperwork, the numbers that are used to cut the keys and pin the cylinders are part of a key system, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today, the actual master key system itself. Another aspect of the key system are the key tracking. Generally in this day and age, it's done using key tracking software. The software will track the keys that are in use in the master key system, who has been assigned those keys, and what keys those doors operate. This will allow you to get keys back when an employee leaves, because you have a record of all the keys that have been distributed or assigned to that particular employee. Master keying, or key systems rather, also include policies and procedures associated with the master key system. Policies and procedures would include things like who cuts the keys, whether it's an internal locksmith of maintenance or security department. Is it an outside retail locksmith? What are the policies regarding what happens when a key is lost? Does that mean that you have to rekey the system? How are the key blanks stored? What type of authorization procedures are required to get additional keys in the master key system? So those are the component parts of a key system. We will once again be focusing on the master key system itself, the paperwork, the numbers used for master keying a cylinder. All right, so here we see a building with some keys superimposed on it. These keys represent keys that operate individual offices in this building. Now, in addition to having the individual keys that just open one door, we can set up a key that will open all the doors on a particular floor. Now, maybe this is given to the cleaning service. Maybe you have a different crews. A crew that cleans the first floor offices would be given a key that fits all the doors on the first floor. We could have another key that only fits the doors on the second floor. All the doors on the second floor could be operated by a separate key, and we could do the same thing for the third floor. Now we could also set it up so that we have a key that opens all the doors in a particular department, let's say the accounting department would be operated by the same key. We can also have a key that will open all the doors in the building. That would be carried by maybe the janitorial staff or maintenance. It might go to the security department or the building owner. We can also take that key and put it in a keykeeper box, a special lock box that would be attached to the front of the building, and that would be accessed by the fire department. Okay, so here we see a cylinder cut away from the side. We can see the orange arrow on the screen. That's going to be a master key, or master pin rather, that's inserted in that chamber. You can see that that pin is very small. You'll notice that there are two breaking points between that pin, between the master pin, the bottom pin, and the top pin. Because there are two breaking points, there is the ability to arrange those pins in different order or sequence, and it does allow two keys to operate in the cylinder. So when we master key a cylinder, we're going to be adding some additional pins so we have more breaking points between the pins or more ways to arrange the pins. The more pins that are inserted in the cylinder, the more keys that will operate it. Next, we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of master keying. So before we do that, I want you to think for a moment about a building that is master keyed versus a building that is not master keyed. So think to yourself, if a building is operated by a master key, is it more or less secure as a building than a building that is master keyed? So a master keyed building more or less secure than a building that is not master keyed? Or do you think that master keying does not really affect the security of the building? So give that some thought. All right, now oftentimes when we pose this particular question, we get half of the participants saying that a master keyed building is more secure, and half the participants say the building is less secure. So the answer is that the building that is master keyed is actually less secure. The cylinders themselves are less secure because they are more vulnerable to picking, key manipulation, or bumping attacks. So that's one of the disadvantages of a master key system. All right, so master keying is also a system of organizing the keys that operate the various cylinders. And you can see we have an example here. This looks very similar to an organizational chart. It is called a key schematic. So it does show the relationship between the keys or the hierarchy. But master keying is a good way for organizing the keys in use. Okay, so another advantage is that there are fewer keys to carry. So for example, in this chart, the key in the middle would represent the key that fits everything. So it would fit the exterior doors, the offices, the storage rooms, mechanical rooms. All the doors in the building can be operated by a single key. That means there would be fewer keys to carry, and this makes it much more convenient. When a maintenance person or a security guard is trying to access a particular area, they don't have to fumble through a large ring of keys, so this will make it much quicker and easier to gain access. Now, another advantage is that there is quick emergency access. We talked about the fact that we can have one key inside a special lockbox mounted to the front of the building. The fire department would have a key to that box. Inside the box would be a key that fits all the doors in the building. So this would allow the fire department to do their job, and they can get in any of the doors without having to break down any doors. This could also be used by police departments, maybe a SWAT team if there's an active shooter situation. The police department could also access that key in that special lock box. Now, another advantage, at least for the building owner, would be a sense of authority or prestige. Now, this is not necessarily a good reason for master keying, but nonetheless, this is something that is embraced oftentimes by the building owner or the president of the company or somebody higher up in the organization. So when they carry one key that opens everything, that gives them a sense of prestige or control or authority. Once again, not a good reason, not a primary reason to master keying, but it is one of the side benefits or advantages, at least to the building owner. Now, another disadvantage of master keying is the fact that there is a risk associated with losing a master key, especially the higher level master keys in the system. So there's certain liability, there's certain expenses that are associated with a key, higher level key if it is lost. So to calculate the value or the cost of that master key, we take into consideration that if you lose a key, you generally have to rekey the cylinders that that key will operate. So rekeying a cylinder would involve taking the cylinder off the door, taking it apart, replacing the pins inside, reassembling it, reinstalling it, cutting new keys, and distributing keys to individuals that need access. So there's a lot of labor and material cost associated with that. So if we estimate that it would be about $50 per cylinder to rekey, and if the key that was lost operates 100 locks, then the value of the key that is lost is $5,000. Now, most of us would not carry around $5,000 cash in our pockets, but some of us do if we're involved in the security or maintenance or building owner or a high-level officer in a company. We may be carrying that amount of value in our pocket in the form of a master key. So we need to take that into consideration. The value of the key is much more than the brass material, the cost that you would incur if you went to the local hardware store or locksmith to get a key duplicated. As a result of that high value, one of our recommendations is that keys to a facility, especially those higher level master keys, should never leave the premises. They should be checked in and out at the beginning of every shift, and a use of an electronic key cabinet that has the ability to audit those transactions is even a better method to use. All right, another disadvantage is the cylinders that are master keyed are less secure. A cylinder that has a lot of master pins in it is easier to pick. You can pick it either using professional locksmithing tools, which are readily available on the internet. There are videos on the internet that show you how to pick cylinders. You can use professional lock-picking tools, or you can use keys that are close to being correct, and that's jiggling those keys up and down, in and out. So by manipulating those keys, you may be able to get the cylinder open. Cylinders are also more vulnerable, cylinders that are master keyed, that is, are more vulnerable to lock bumping. And that's another thing that you can research online, another technique for bypassing a cylinder. Another disadvantage is the lock that is master keyed is slightly more vulnerable to malfunction. That's because the master pins are very small. If you insert a lot of master pins in a cylinder, and if that cylinder is used on an entry door, for example, that is heavily used, it's going to get a lot of wear. As that cylinder wears extensively, it is possible that those master keys might fall out, they could tip, and they could jam. So master keying can make the cylinder just a little bit more vulnerable or prone to malfunctioning. Now, when we master key, we're actually invoking a balancing act. We're trying to balance safety, security, and convenience. And you can see looking at this picture that the convenience aspect is on the opposite side of the balance beam scale, opposite security and safety. So as convenience increases, security and safety are going to decrease. So our goal is to come up with a master key system that provides a level of convenience, but not at the expense of safety and security. We always want to make the master key system as secure and safe as possible. That's our first priority. And then we'll try and make it as convenient as we can. All right, next we want to talk a little bit about terminology, some terms associated with cylinders and keys and master keying itself. So we'll start out with the key. So the first term we want to talk about is the bow of the key. This is the part that you grab between your fingers. It generally will have the manufacturer's name on the bow, especially if it's a factory original key. There may also be some numbers and letters that could either indicate the keyway, or it may indicate the labels that are assigned as part of the master key system. We have the blade of the key. That's the thin, narrow portion of the key that has a series of grooves on it that will determine the keyway itself. We have the shoulder of the key that will limit how far the key goes into the cylinder. We have the bittings on the key. Those are also known as the cuts or the depths. An untrained individual might refer to those as the teeth or the notches on the key. We also have a key section. Think of that as being similar to a cross-sectional view. This is the shape of the keyway itself. It's closely related to the keyway in the plug. Here on the screen, we have an example on the left-hand side of a key blank. So with the key blank, you still have the grooves running along the side of the blade, but there are no bittings or cuts on the top of the blade. The key on the right includes the bitting, so that would be an example of a cut key. Next term to know is a cylinder. So we have the complete lock set on the door. And in this particular case, we're looking at a mortise lock set because the cylinder will screw into the mortise lock case, and then it will be held in place with a set screw. The cylinder itself is the part that accepts the key, and that's the part that we're going to be master keying. For the cylinder part names, we have the plug. That's the part that will accept the key. That's the inner circle. The outer portion is called the shell. Think of that as being similar to the shell of a nut. We have the bottom pins, and the bottom pins are rounded at the bottom. For easier key insertion, the pins will ride up and down the bittings on the key. We have the master pins. Those are much smaller than the other pins in the cylinder. They, of course, are added when we are master keying the cylinder. In a master keyed cylinder, you can have one or more master pins inserted into the cylinder. We also have the top pins. Those are going to come directly underneath the springs. The springs push down on the top pins push down on the master pins and the bottom pins, so that the bottom pins make contact with the bittings on the key. We also have an Everest check pin. Now this is part of a Schlage Everest cylinder. Everest is a particular type of design. It is a patent protected design, so we have to incorporate a specialized feature in the cylinder. We do that in the form of a check pin. The check pin is going to interact or work with a special feature on the key. This makes the cylinder design unique and allowed us to get a patent. While the patent is in force, no one can produce keys for that particular design. That will help prevent unauthorized key duplication because you won't find the keys at the local hardware store or your big box merchants. Next term to be familiar with is called keyed different. That's where each of these three keys, numbered 1 through 3, will have their own individual operating key. Keyed different. Sometimes you'll see that abbreviated in your paperwork as KD, keyed different. Each key has its own unique key. Next term is keyed alike. That means when you have two or more cylinders that are operated by one key. Keyed alike is sometimes abbreviated KA. So let's say you had two doors that lead into a single room. Because they both lead to the same space, you would typically key alike the front and back door to that particular room. Next term is master key. That's where each cylinder is going to have its own individual operating key, and then there will be one key that will operate an entire group of cylinders. It may be all the cylinders on a particular floor, or it may be all the cylinders used in a particular department. Next, we want to talk about the levels of keying in a master key system. So it's done in pyramid format. We start at the base of the pyramid. We're going to start out with level 1, and that would include the change keys. Change keys are the lowest level operating keys in the system. They will typically only operate one cylinder. Now the change keys, that's kind of a confusing term. They're not really changing anything out. For example, they don't pull a core out of a housing. That would be done by a key called a control key. And that would be associated with the small format interchangeable core cylinders, sometimes referred to as the best style of cylinder. So change keys, simply the lowest level keys in a master key system, typically operate one cylinder. Next we have level 2. That's where we would have the master keys. Master keys, once again, an example of those would be a floor master or a department master. Next we go into level 3. That's where we would have the grand master. Grand master keys will typically operate an entire building. Above that we have level 4, and that would be the great grandmaster. So let's say we had a small campus, community college campus. The grandmaster key might operate all the buildings on campus. Another term to know is TMK, and that stands for top master key. So you sometimes see it abbreviated as TMK. That's the highest level key in the system, and it typically operates all the doors in the master key system. Now the top master key term will change or will refer to a different type of key depending on the size of the system. So let's say, for example, you had an apartment building where each tenant had their own key to their apartment, but the building superintendent will have a master key that fits all the doors in the apartment building. That would be an example of a 2-level master key system, and in that case, the top master key is simply a master key. Now, if you had an office building with multiple floors and you had a key that fit all the doors, that would be the grand master key. In that example, the grand master key would be considered the top master key. All right, so we want to go back to that office building, take a look at the keys, and we want to assign some names to those keys. So we talked about the keys that fit the individual offices. Those, once again, would be known as the change keys, the individual operating keys. We took a look at the keys that would operate all the doors on a particular floor, known as a floor master. So those would be the master keys, either floor masters or department masters. Then we looked at a key that would fit everything in the building. In this particular case, because it's a 3-level system, that would be referred to as the grand master key. All right, so another question for you to contemplate. So what, based on this layout and the pyramid that we talked about, think to yourself, what would be the highest level of keying you've seen in use in a master key system? So was it a 1-level system where there's no master, a 2-level system where there's a master key level and a change key level, 3-level system where there's change keys, master keys, and grand masters, or possibly a 4-level system that includes a change key, master key, grand master, and great grandmaster. All right, so if you're like most people, you'd probably be familiar or have seen 3-level master key systems. Those are probably the most common master key systems in use, where there are 3 levels. You don't start to get into the 4-level systems until you're dealing with a large university, hospital, office building, or manufacturing complex. Our next term you should be familiar with is a key symbol. These are the letters and or numbers that are stamped on the key. This is going to help identify the keys, show the hierarchy or relationship between the keys. And key symbols are typically taken from something called the standard key coding system, which we will get into. We have here examples of a single letter A. That's actually a label for a grand master key, single letter, in this case A. And then on the right-hand side, we have a key that's labeled AA2. So that would be an example of a change key. So it refers to the second change key under the AA master. So that's why we precede that number with the double letters. AA would actually be the master key. So there's a certain logic that goes along with the key symbols if you are using standard key coding. Now, key symbols may also be unique to a particular facility. There may be some internal numbering or lettering system in place that's different than standard key coding. All right, so here we have an example of standard key coding. So standard key coding is widely accepted or used in the lock industry. So all major manufacturers use and recommend the use of standard key coding. It is something that has been approved and is accepted by the Associated Locksmiths of America, the Door Hardware Institute, the Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association would all recommend and endorse the use of standard key coding. It is something that is standardized throughout the system. Most people that are involved in security aspects, mechanical locks and keys, would be familiar with standard key coding. Right on the screen now, on the left-hand side, we have what's known as a key schematic. And you can see that this is very similar to an organizational chart. At the very bottom or the base of this, we have some doors. So you can see we've got some office doors. We've got some doors associated with maintenance at the base of the pyramid. On the left-hand side, we have a first floor master key indicated. We also have a maintenance master key on the right-hand side. And at the very top would be the building grand master key. On the right, we can see example, once again, of standard key coding labeling. So at the top of that pyramid, we have a single letter A. That would be the label for the grand master key. The master keys are labeled using double letters, AA and AB in this example. So the master keys start or begin with the grand master key lettered, followed by sequential letters of the alphabet. At the very base, we have a combination, a pair of letters followed by a number. So AA1 would indicate that that is the first change key under the AA master. So you can begin to see that there is certain logic or relationship or hierarchy between the keys. So once again, example of a key schematic. On the right-hand side, we are using standard key coding labels for the keys. Another term for you to be familiar with is cross-keying. Now, cross-keying is designed to provide additional levels or means convenience. We want to increase the convenience. It's basically designed so users have to carry fewer keys. Now here we have an example of an apartment building. You can see all the keys listed on the screen. Those are the keys that fit the individual apartment doors. Now the front door is cross-keyed so that all of the individual apartment keys will fit or operate that front door. This is an example of cross-keying. It means that the tenants only have to carry one key. Their apartment key will operate the front door. This does require us to add additional master pins inside the cylinder. This makes the cylinder less secure. Cross-keying of this type is also referred to as maison keying. It's a French term meaning house key, and this is something that should never be done on an exterior or perimeter door of a building because it does reduce the security of the opening. Better option, least expensive option, is to have tenants carry two keys, one key for their apartment and one key for the entry door. An even better option is to use some type of electronic access control so that somebody loses the credential that fits the front door that can easily and quickly be removed from the system or deactivated without affecting any of the other credentials. So how does master keying work from a mechanical standpoint? All right, so we're going to go ahead and play a video here. This is a video of a Schlage Everest 29 cylinder. So let me go ahead and play that for you. First thing I want to do is point out that along the side of the blade of the key, we have an undercut groove here. We have a special landing area for an extra pin that's used inside the cylinder. We have some traditional cuts across the top of the blade of the key. The front of the cylinder, you can see this little peak or chevron shape. That's an indication that it is one of the Everest patent-protected designs. So let me go ahead and play this for you. All right, so you can see the key is entering the cylinder. The blade of the key makes contact with the bottom pins. They're going to move up and down. Side of the key will pick up that check pin. When everything is aligned correctly, the plug is going to turn. Pins are going to break away. Bottom pins stay in the plug along with the check pin. Top pins and springs stay in the shell. Okay, let me go ahead and play that again with you. And I won't do any talking here so you can concentrate on the movement. All right, so I'm going to pause it there, and you can see in this particular chamber here, there is a master pin, two breaking points between the master pin, bottom pin, and top pin. So there are two ways we can arrange that master pin. The master pin could be either above the shear line or below the shear line. The shear line is the space between the plug and the shell. It's the point at which the pins have to be raised up to in order to get that plug to turn. All right, so here we can see a cylinder. Now these are both the same cylinder, but they are utilizing two different keys. So on the left-hand side, we're using a green key, and that we're going to call the change key. On the right-hand side, same cylinder, but we're going to insert a different key. That's going to be the master key. So if you look at the second chamber here, you can see that the green master pin is below the shear line. In this application, when we insert the red key, the green master pin is above the shear line. With the green change key in this cylinder, the red master pin is above the shear line, and over here the red master pin is below the shear line. There's actually 4 different ways we can arrange those pins. There are 4 keys that will work in the cylinder. The more pins we add into the cylinder, the more keys will operate. All right, some best practices to consider when you are master keying. So first of all, there is a fallacy associated with stamping the keys "do not duplicate." So do not duplicate is really a polite request not to cut the keys or not to duplicate the keys. But if you stop and think about it for a moment, if you took a piece of blue painter's tape and put it over that do not duplicate and wrote front door on it, took it to the local hardware store, if they have the blank, chances are they're going to cut that key without asking any questions, without asking for a letter of authorization or asking for any identification. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a key duplicating machine. On the left-hand side, you would place the original key. There's a stylus that will follow the cuts or the biddings on the key. On the right-hand side is a key cutter, so that will trace or copy the cuts onto the key blank. Now, it is highly recommended for any master key system, certainly any new master key system, when you are setting it up, that you do invest in a patent-protected product. patent-protected products do prevent against unauthorized key duplication. So how do patents work? Well, when a product is patented, if it is unique, novel, or different, the Patent Office will grant a patent to the inventor. From the filing date of the patent is good for 20 years. While the patent is in force, no other manufacturer can produce the cylinders and/or the keys. As a result, a manufacturer such as Schlage can control the distribution of the blanks. We can set the policies and procedures associated with purchasing, distributing, stocking the key blanks. This allows Schlage to keep the key blanks out of the local hardware stores or the big box merchants. We can control the distribution of the keys. Because we can control the distribution of the blanks, we can help prevent the unauthorized duplication of the keys. Another best practice is choosing the proper level of key control. Here you can see our first level is an open level of control. That's where there are no controls over the sale or distribution of the blanks. These blanks would be readily available at the local hardware store. They can be cut without any authorization or any signatures or any ID. So open key blanks are generally associated with residential lock sets or products. Next level would be restricted. That's where the factory puts some type of restriction on the distribution of the keys. So restricted keys may or may not be patent protected. They are restricted by the manufacturer, but the reality is if another manufacturer wanted to make the key blanks, they could, and then the factory would lose control over the keys themselves because there would be another source for them. A higher level of control, and this one is highly recommended for master key systems, is some type of patent-protected keyway. When you are using a patent-protected keyway, aftermarket or imitation blanks are not available as long as the patent is in force. And those patents are good, once again, for 20 years. When they do expire, another key blank manufacturer could start producing those keys. If you want an even higher level of protection, you would go with a high security cylinder. High security cylinders will provide additional protection against picking, and if they are listed by Underwriters Laboratory, the ultimate in protection, a UL listed cylinder is going to provide not only pick resistance, but also resistance against drilling. So in the high security applications, a high security UL 437 listed cylinder would be in use. Now we should avoid cross-keying, as I had mentioned. That's a best practice, certainly on any exterior doors to the building. You want to avoid cross-keying. Either have individuals carry a second key or use some type of electronic access control. Another best practice is to require signatures anytime the keys are being distributed. So a signature would be an indication that the individual receiving the keys would follow certain policies and procedures. It would also indicate the value of the key, what the labor costs would be if the key is lost and the cylinders have to be rekeyed. That doesn't mean you can actually charge an employee for the rekeying cost, but would illustrate to them the value of the key, that they should take measures to protect it. The contract that they are signing should also indicate what happens if they lose the key, which is generally reporting the key immediately if it is lost or stolen, possibly filling out a police report. Also indicating that they are required to return the keys if they leave the employ of the company. Another best practice is to have some type of key tracking software that will track the keys, track what keys operate what doors, and who has received those keys. This will allow you to perform annual audits, also be able to print out a list of keys that an individual holds, so when they leave the organization, the HR department or security department can make sure that those keys are returned. Another best practice is to keep some factory original keys on file and use those anytime you want to duplicate a key. This will help ensure the accuracy of the duplicate keys, because every time you duplicate a key, if you duplicate from a duplicate, you're going to be compounding the variances in the tolerances. Eventually the keys are going to start to stick or potentially stop working. An alternative to duplicating keys from file keys or tracing the keys is to cut the keys by number or by code, either using a code cutting machine or some type of punch machine. All right, so to recap some of the important things we talked about in this presentation, we talked about the advantages and disadvantages of master keying. It's important that you understand those disadvantages and you can take steps to mitigate all the disadvantages associated with master keying. And you can do that by balancing safety, security, and convenience. Remember, safety and security should always be done as a priority over convenience. You, however, do not want to make the system too inconvenient, because if you do, individuals try and circumvent or get around the security aspects of the master key system. You need to make sure you understand the value of the master key. Anybody that receives a master key should be taught or told the value of that top master key to help ensure that they are going to treat it responsibly, report it if it's lost or stolen. Talked about some of the terminology used to communicate clearly when you are designing or referring to a master key system. Things like keyed alike, keyed different, master keyed, cross keyed. We talked about cylinder terminology, the keys, the bittings, the keyways. We also talked about the different types of pins inside of a cylinder. Talked about some best practices, things like not allowing master keys to be taken home. They should be checked in and out at the beginning and end of every shift. Also using patent protected products. This is going to make the keys less likely to be duplicated without proper authorization. Making sure that the keys are signed for, and that contract would indicate the value of the keys, what they need to do if the keys are lost or stolen, and that the fact is that they should be returned when the employee leaves the organization. Talking about also avoiding cross-keying, having multiple keys operate one cylinder, especially if they are perimeter type doors. So we also have some resources for you to check into. We've got idighardware.com. This is a blog produced by one of our Legion's employees, Lori Green. She is an expert in life safety codes related to door hardware. So if you're looking for some good case studies, if you have some questions on what you can and cannot do, especially to fire-rated doors, check out that iDig Hardware website. We also have some additional videos for you on our Legion website, allegion.com/US. You can also go to the Legion website to download some copies of service manuals or technical manuals that will help you assist you when you are servicing the product. And finally, if you need any tech support, you can call our customer care number. They will put you in touch with our tech support departments for all of our product lines, whether it's Schlage, LCN, Von Duprin, Steel, Kraft, or Falcon. So I want to thank you very much for taking some time to look at this presentation. It is my hope that you've learned something during this presentation, and that you have some information that will help you make or produce master key systems that will provide not only convenience, but safety, security, and longevity as well. So thank you once again. It's been my pleasure, and I hope to see you during a future presentation.